Good afternoon. Welcome to this session. It's a revision session for you before the exam. At the beginning, allow me to introduce my colleagues in the studio, Ms. Ula Al-Moui.
Good afternoon.
English Language Supervisor, Tartus Directorate. Ms. Maha Al-Jarkas, English Language Teacher, Damascus Directorate. And Ms. Nasreen Saqbani, English Language Teacher, Damascus. Good afternoon. Damascus Directorate. And I want to thank our directors in the studio, Ms. Ghina Al-Hayek, Ms. Sabreen Al-Wais, and Ms. Rasha Khansa. The director of the platform, Mr. Mahmoud Hamid. We are going for today just to give you a revision for what you have in your book. Next slide, Ms. Ghina, please. And I will ask Ms. Ula to give some tips to the students for the exam book before we start with used to and with.
Okay, to start with, they have to pay attention to the numbers of questions. So they should stick to the number, and if they made a mistake, and we wish they don't do that, they can write the question or the answer to the question by the end of the book. But they have to stick to the numbers because each question has a number and they have to stick to it. You have to be clean, you have to be careful, be quiet and calm. Hopefully they're going to be easy and clear and from the book, of course.
Thank you. So when you change the question, you don't write it next to the number written in the exam book. Please write next to the original number, the answer is on page 3, 4, etc. And my advice for the paragraph, write the words separately. Don't put all the words as one word. Yes. Usually, grade 9 students...
They should pay attention to the handwriting because sometimes it's difficult to be read.
Yes. The previous, Ms. Ghina, the previous slide, used to and would, Ms. Ghina, the previous one.
Before, the one before.
Yes, that's it. Please.
Okay, to start with, the first one is to differentiate between used to and would. Mm-hmm. Both of them are used to talk about habits that were frequent in the past but not anymore. But when we use used to, in this way we can talk about state and active verbs. Like miss, run, dress, get dressed, play, anything. So with used to, we can use any verb, state or active verb. Like I used to love kittens when I was a child. I used to swim in the river before we moved to Damascus. Now, with would, we can only use active verbs. Mm-hmm. So we have to pay attention to that. With would, we can only use active verbs like play, run, eat. We can't use verbs like leave or miss. Mm-hmm. Example, I would play football with my friends in the park when I was 5 years old. Here we have a note. To make negative of used to, it's this way. Didn't used to, the base form goes with did. Mm-hmm. Didn't used to.
Yes. Next slide, Ms. Ghina. Ms. Maha?
Yes.
Couldn't,
was, were able to. We use could and couldn't to talk about general ability or possibility. We have example, I could ride a horse. And we use was or were able to for ability in a particular situation.
In a particular situation.
Example, the horse was running fast, but I was able to control it in the end.
So in one specific occasion, not as general ability. Yes, next slide. Should, must, have to with Ms. Nasreen.
Yes. Should, must, and have to are auxiliaries. They are similar somehow. To differentiate between them, we usually use must with someone who has authority, like a father to his child, a teacher to his student, or a doctor to his patient. For example, a father to his son, you must be home before 10. So this is, now he is using his authority. And about have to is used to tell someone's order for a public law. Like, I have to be home before 10. This is a law. You have to wear a uniform. This is a school rule, so we use have to. The last one is should. Should is used to give advice. For example, you should go to bed early. You shouldn't smoke. So that's it.
So the difference between must and have to, they are obligatory. Should is optional. The one can do or not do after should. But must and have to, they are obligations, and the listener should heed to what he was told to do.
Yes.
Next, Ms. Ghina, we come to reported speech.
Please first allow me to answer a question to Yara Assaf. She's asking if the paragraphs in units 11 and 12 are required or not. So I think they are not, since 11 and 12.
Yes, actually, the ministry put all required issues on the site. And as we said previously, the minister said on TV that only what the students took while they were at school, this is required for the exam. So you don't need to. But we gave the information in these 2 units to all the students.
Okay, now to reported speech. When we report a speech, we use he said or he told to talk about what other people said. How do we do that? There are 3 points. The first one is with the tenses. We go 1 tense back. So if we have a present simple, it becomes past simple. Present continuous, past continuous. We can have an example. I'm hungry. We can make it, he said he was hungry.
So we went 1 tense.
So the first step is 1 tense back. The second step is changing the pronoun. So I becomes he or she, and the same thing with possessive pronouns. My becomes his or her, and things like that. My becomes like my house. He said like his house. So my, his, or her. The third point is with time references. Everything near comes far. Like now becomes then. Today, that day. Yesterday, the day before.
Well, I want to add something not written here. I becomes he or she, but if the real sentence was he or she, they don't change.
They don't change it.
Next slide, Ms. Ghina, please. Yes, Ms. Maha.
Time references in the reported speech. We said before that everything near becomes far. Like here becomes there, this becomes that, today becomes that day, tomorrow becomes the next day, and yesterday the day before.
Okay. Next slide. Ms. Ghina, next. Ms. Nasreen, you're
Yes.
going to talk about too much, too many, too, more, and enough.
Yes. All these words usually are quantity words. And the first point that students have to pay attention to the using of the nouns. We have countable nouns and uncountable nouns, which is a very main idea in using quantity words. So we use too much with uncountable nouns, meaning more than okay.
More than okay, yes.
Yes. We use too many with countable nouns, meaning more than okay. So the same using, but with the countable or uncountable. Too, before adjective, means very in a negative way. Like when we say too hot, too bad,
Exactly.
it usually gives a negative meaning. We use enough after an adjective, but before a noun. After an adjective like I
Tall
am
enough. He is tall enough to reach the shell.
tall enough,
for
or I
example.
am not tall enough,
I'm not tall enough.
because in the
And
ninth grade book,
Before a noun, we don't
use-
have enough chairs,
Yes.
for example.
but in the ninth grade book they use it with negative form. And before noun also we can use it. We use more for another amount or quantity.
Or quantity. Next slide, Ms. Ghina. The articles and the quantifiers. Ms.
And now to
Paula.
start with a and. We use them with singular, countable, indefinite nouns, of which there are more than one, mentioned for the first time. It's a cat, for example. It's more than one cat, and it's mentioned for the first time. When we mentioned it for the second time, this way we use it with the.
Yes.
The cat I saw yesterday, etc. So we use a and for things that are mentioned for the first time or singular countable. Now to move on with the. If there's only one in the universe, like the sun, the sky, so it's only one. If the noun is mentioned before, like I said, I bought a car, the car
Actually,
is blue.
with the sun it's okay, but with the star it's not okay.
The sky, not the star.
The sky, yeah, okay. I misheard you.
No, it's okay. Okay, some planets do have more than one star. So when it's mentioned for the second time, I bought a car, the car is blue,
Right.
it's mentioned for the second time.
Second time,
When we add a phrase or clause like the man I told you about, this is a phrase. Musical instrument like I play the violin, I play the piano, etc. Now with some, we use some with the plural nouns and uncountable nouns, countable and uncountable nouns.
When it's plural, countable, and with uncountable nouns. Next slide, Miss Rina. We continue with Miss Maha.
Yes, another quantifier is all. It means every, and it's used with countable and uncountable nouns.
Yes.
Example, all the houses in our street are old-fashioned. All transport on the island is provided by horses and carts. And we have another quantifier, which is many, with plural countable nouns. Example, many people moved to the cities from the countryside to work.
Yes. Next, Miss Rina. We come to Miss Nasreen. You like the present simple.
Present perfect.
Present perfect.
This perfect? Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Present perfect simple.
When we talk about tenses, we usually mention the form and the usage.
Yes.
So as for the usage, for the form, sorry, in the affirmative form, we use after the subject have or has, and verb in the present participle, verb 3,
Past
then
participle, verb
past
3.
participle, yes, and the complement. For example, I have just eaten lunch. She has almost finished cleaning the house. And as the question, we start with the auxiliary.
We
so
invert.
invert the subject with the auxiliary, have or has. We start with have or has, then the subject and verb 3, the complement. For example, have you eaten lunch yet? Has he written a letter? And of course, the negative form is easy because we have an auxiliary verb, so we add not to the auxiliary verb. For example, I haven't done my homework yet. She has never played tennis. And we have to pay attention. When we say haven't, we mean have not. And when we say hasn't, we mean has not. We don't say has not, usually. Always we use it in this way.
Okay. Next, Miss Rina. The use of the present
The
perfect.
use.
Miss Sarah.
We use present perfect to talk about actions that happened in the past without mentioning the time of it's
No
happening.
time
No
reference.
time reference. And when we talk about it now, or we have something that result, there's a result now. This way we use present perfect. We can use words like already, just, and yet. Examples, I have just eaten lunch. My father hasn't come yet. Has your father come yet? I have already written an email.
Okay. Next, Miss Rina. Present perfect and past simple difference between
Yes.
them, Miss Maha.
The difference between these two tenses is a slight difference, which is the time.
Yes.
The time in the past simple is known,
Yes.
while in the present perfect, the time is not known. But what is
Mutual.
yes, what is mutual is that the two or both actions happened before now.
Yes. Next slide. Past perfect tense, Miss Nasreen.
Yes. Now we come to the past perfect. In the past perfect, we usually use in the sentence two verbs in the past. One of them is the earlier one. And as for the form, here we use the past of have and has. So after the subject, we put had plus verb 3 plus the complement. For example, I had eaten breakfast before I went to school. And the question form, So we start with the auxiliary. Had he eaten breakfast before he went to school? The negative form, like what we did before, we add not to the auxiliary. I hadn't eaten breakfast before I went to school.
Thank you. Next slide, Miss.
There's a question from حيدرة. He says كيف أستطيع الدخول على مراجعة عن طريق المصمم سكايب. He wants the address of the platform on Skype.
Actually, we will answer you. It's a technical issue. The director of the
And
platform
about Myrna, so
Yes,
is
there's
going to
another
give you.
question. Yes.
Myrna is asking about question tags. I think we're going to go through question tags.
We can, if we don't have it on a slide, we can
Okay.
answer it, and
Because
you
she's
can
go-
if you like.
Okay, she's asking about a sentence, certain sentence. It's not time to go home yet. It is not time. So the auxiliary verb is. You have to use it in the opposite way. Here it's in negative. We have to use it in affirmative. So it is not time. Is it?
Is it?
Is it? Yes.
Yes.
She knows the answer, but she's asking why. So I think we can go through it.
She needs detailed explanation.
Always students they get confused about the S.
Yes.
They don't know if it is or has. We are
No,
going
this
to
way,
mention
I
it.
think it's because we don't have past participle,
Yes,
the
that's
third
it.
form
Yes.
of the verb, it's not has. So we use the auxiliary verb in the question text, and we use it in the opposite way in the main sentence, let's say. If it's negative, we use it in the affirmative,
or positive.
form,
Yes.
Exactly.
positive form. Now, back to the use of the past perfect. When we use past perfect, we are talking about two actions that happened in the past. But to show that there is a period of time between these two actions, we use the past perfect. So we have two actions. One happened before the other. The first one that happened is put or used in the past perfect.
Yes.
The second one is usually past simple or time reference to the past.
So they are both simple past
Simple past.
actions, but to show which one happened first,
We
we
use-
put it in the past perfect, and what happened later in the simple past tense.
Example, I had eaten breakfast before I went to school. So breakfast was first. I ate breakfast first, then I went to school.
Actually, in this sentence, mainly, since we have the word before, the adverb before,
No
we
need
can
to.
we can say I
can.
ate breakfast before I went to school because it's clear. But since we are explaining the past perfect, we put it in the past perfect to show that it happened first. Next slide, Ms. Rina, please. Who and which?
Yes.
Ms. Maha.
Who and which are relative pronouns. They are used in relative clauses. Who is used with people. Example, Mr. Hamdan, who has got a lot of experience, is a doctor. And which is used with things. The museum, which is in the city center, is very interesting. Damascus, which is the capital of Syria, has lovely traditional houses. And Samia's uncle and aunt, who are coming to visit us, live in the UAE.
Thank you. Next slide. Miss Nasreen.
Yes. As soon as
Adverbs of time.
adverbs of time, when, until, before, after, all these words we use them with simple present, simple past, or more than this tenses.
Yes.
Actually, yes. In this,
We form time clauses when we
we
use them.
form time clauses. We use them to form time clauses. For example, Ahmed can't play computer games until he finishes his homework. He finished his homework. So here we are.
Here it's future meaning,
Yes.
but we use the simple present with until to show future. After
show
he finishes,
future.
he can.
Yes.
So he cannot until he finishes.
Another example, as soon as you arrive home, please call me. When you finish your homework, you can go out.
Just I want to say something. As soon as you arrive home, please call me is one of the choices. We can say, as soon as I arrive home, I will call you. We can use
Yes.
future. But this is imperative, please call me. But the focus is to show that we use as soon as with the simple present to form time clause, add time clause. Yes,
Yes.
continue, please.
Before you go out, please turn the light off. Another example, after spending too much time playing computer game, Selma had a terrible headache.
Yes. The following slide next, Miss Rina, please. Conditional sentences type 2, Miss Ula.
Type 2. We use type 2 to talk about unreal situations in the present and the future. So when it's unreal, we can use this form. If with simple past, and the other side, let's say, of the sentence, we use would with infinitive or the base form of the verb. So simple past with would. Simple past in one side and would with the other side. Example, if I had money, I would give you some. If I had money, I would give you some.
This is unreal.
With
the reality is I don't have money.
So I
and
can't give you
I'm
any
not going to give you anything.
Yes.
If I had, I would.
What would you do if you were me? Again, you are not in my place, so, but what would you do if you were me? Unreal situation. Here we can note that we can use where with all pronouns. So even if we have to use was, we can use where with if conditional sentences. We also use it to give an advice. If I were you, I would tell you the truth. If I were you, I would tell you the truth.
Thank you. Miss Rina, next. Miss Ma, to
Yes.
give advice.
To give advice, we have two expressions, why don't you and should. Examples, why don't you try doing exercise? Why don't you open the window to get fresh air? You should stop smoking. You shouldn't eat too much sugar.
All these for giving advice.
Advice.
Thank you. Miss Rina, next. Miss
Yes.
Nisreen.
The passive voice, we use the passive voice usually when the focus is
Is
on
on
the
the object.
action, on the action, or on not on who did
On the object.
action.
When the
yes.
concentration is on the object.
Yes. So we change the subject. Here
Actually, since you mentioned this, either the subject is not known or not important,
Yes.
or we concentrate on the object.
Yes, that's it. The
Next slide, Miss Nisreen, how to change the passive.
How to change? First, the object becomes at the beginning of the sentence. Second, the main verb changes into past participle. Third, we use verb to be before the verb.
As follows.
As follows.
It's after verb to be, actually,
Yes.
between the verb 3 and the object.
So we start with the
So
object.
the object becomes at the beginning with all tenses.
Yes.
And the verb, the main verb, changes to verb 3 with
In
all tenses.
tenses.
Between these two, we use verb to be as follows.
Yes, as follows. In the present, we use
In the present simple.
in the present simple we use am, is, and are. For example,
Either am, or is, or are.
He eats apples. Here, the subject is he, and the verb is eat. It becomes, in the passive, apples, which is the object. We put it in the beginning, and apples, because it is plural, so we use verb to be,
Are.
are. Then eat, we put it in the past participle, eaten.
Apples are eaten.
Yes. Now, when the subject is definite, we put it at the end of the sentences, preceded with by.
By.
Precedes.
Preceded.
Sammy
Preceded by.
preceded. Sammy eats apples.
Becomes.
Here becomes, so the object is apples, are eaten by Sammy.
Sammy.
In the past, we use here
In the
was.
past simple, we use was,
or were. Yes. He ate apples becomes apples were eaten.
Thank you, Ms. Nisreen. Next slide, Ms. Rina. Ms. Ula, you are going to continue in the present
to
and past
continue.
continuous.
So, so far we've been talking about passive voice. So we start with the object. The main verb of the sentence is put in the past participle, and we give the tense of the sentence to verb to be. Now, with the present continuous, we use being. Being, like in this example, he is eating apples becomes apples are being eaten. Now, it's are instead of is, because we have a new subject now, which is apples.
Yeah, he takes is, but apples takes
Are being eaten. Another one in the past continuous.
Yes.
He was eating apples becomes apples were being eaten. Again, he takes was, but with apples we have a different verb to be, were being eaten. With the present and past perfect, again, we use the main verb in the past participle and a verb to be in the form been in the past participle again, because here we are talking about the perfect. He has eaten apples becomes apples have been eaten. He had eaten apples, apples had been eaten. In the future tense and modals, we use be, because after will, the verb is in the form of infinitive, in the infinitive form.
the base
So,
form.
base form. He will eat apples becomes apples will be eaten. He must eat apples, apples must be eaten.
Yeah, so we use be after all the modals.
So here we have the complete rule. In
Exactly,
the ninth
exactly.
grade, we only have 4 types only. The present simple, and the present continuous, the past simple, and the passive with modal can only
Yeah,
in their book.
thank you.
There's-
If we, yeah, please.
There's another question from Mirna TV. You can explain the usage of a and the, please.
We have just done that.
Again, I'm going to summarize a and an. We start with a and an. We use a with nouns or words that start with a consonant letter. We use an when the word starts with a vowel. The usage is singular, countable, indefinite nouns. Singular, countable, indefinite nouns mentioned for the first time, and there are more than one of it. Singular, countable, indefinite nouns mentioned for the first time, and there are more than one of it. We use the when the listener knows what the speaker is talking about. So instinctively, if I'm the student, I put the. Then if I think that the listener is going to say which one, so the use of the is not correct. When do we use it? When we have only one of the noun in the universe or in the country or in the place. Examples, the sun, the moon, the earth. This is the universe. In the country, the president, the prime minister. In the classroom, the teacher, the board, the door, the table. We cannot say the desk because we have more
Many
than
desks.
one desk in the
Yes.
classroom. So, when mentioned for the second time, as we said, it becomes clear. Instinctively, if I'm a student, I want to use the, I put it, then I see. If the listener or the reader would say, which one? So the use of the is wrong. If it's clear for the listener which one, the use of the is correct. And this is clearness comes from, we have only one, after musical instruments, a noun mentioned for the second time, or when we add a phrase or a clause to an indefinite noun, but it makes it clear, like when we say the girl in blue. The phrase in blue made the girl clear, which
Yes.
girl I'm talking about.
Yes, yes.
I hope this is beneficial. Next slide, Ms. Ghina, to see where we are until now, passive with can. This is what Mr. Sreen mentioned, that in grade 9, they have passive with can. Usually we use be after it. What can be reduced after a volcanic eruption? Can volcanic eruption be predicted?
Yes.
This is the use of be after can, because can is a model. It is followed with
B.
be infinitive form, base form of the word. Is this the last one, Ms. Ghina? Do we have anything after it? We have question
Question
tags.
tags.
Question
Question
tag.
tags.
Whose turn?
Yes.
Ms. Ma.
Question tags are used when we want to make sure something is correct, or when we want to emphasize something we are sure.
So we have two
it
situations.
is correct,
Either want
yes.
to make sure, or we know
are
that it
sure.
is true and we want to emphasize.
Yes. How to make a question tag? First, we use the auxiliary verb if we have it in the sentence.
So the same auxiliary in the sentence should be used.
Yes. or we use do, does or did, and this depends on the tense of the sentence.
Yeah, because in the simple present, in the positive, we do not have an
Yes.
auxiliary,
Yes.
so we use do or does. In the past simple, when the real sentence is in the positive, we do not have an auxiliary verb, so we use did in the past and do and does in the present. Continue,
Yes.
please.
If the sentence is positive, the question tag is negative. And if the sentence is negative, then the question tag is positive. The last step is that we use the contracted form of
Exactly.
not.
This is very important. We cannot say the question tag as full form.
is
We
not
cannot
a-
say is not it.
Yes.
Yes.
Examples. You've got the map, haven't you?
You know why we cannot say, I'm going to say why we not say the full form, because we only put the is with not before the pronoun when it is contracted. We say isn't it.
Yes.
But if we are going to use the full form, we usually say is it not. And this is not the way we form the question tag, so we say we use the contracted form.
Yes.
Next slide, Miss Rina,
I want to add something about the question tag.
please.
Always the students, something which helps them is to concentrate on the auxiliary. When they know where is the auxiliary verb, they would know how to use the question tag. This is
Sometimes
very
they
important.
find difficulty differentiating between the S is or the S
Of
has. If it is followed with verb 3,
So
this is
it
the
is has.
only case
Yes.
for has. What else can be
Like
is
a noun, an adjective, or verb with ing, so it is it.
Okay, so it's only has when it is followed with verb 3.
Yes.
We have a question from Maher. Is the topic optional? I believe he means the paragraph.
The paragraph, we have 2 paragraphs. One of them is optional, yes. Examples. Anyone wants to
But
read the
question
examples
first.
for the question tags?
Yes, you've got the map, haven't you? It's very hot, isn't it? Here we have it is. And I think that Myrna, when she asked before, here we have is, she needs to look after is. If she has, when is contracted or is in the short form, when we have a past participle verb, then it is has, it's not is. But
Yes.
here we don't have a past participle verb, so it means is. So it is very hot, isn't it? We're not late, are we? You won't come, will you? She's written a letter. Here, S is contracted. So it and what is after the S is written, which is the past participle of the verb, which means it's has, not is.
Yes.
So hasn't she? He isn't very smart, is he?
Next, Miss Elena, reported speech.
We said something about it.
Is it yours?
No, it's repeated, I think.
It's repeated because we have reported speech in unit 11.
Yes.
And so that is it why. And
And
we
here
are
the
now.
concentration on time references.
Yes, but here we have to go to the next slide.
Go to the next slide, Miss
The
Rina.
concentration here about the time reference.
And we go to
Wish. Wish.
Which is
Is not
the last
required.
Is not included. So, what else do we have, Miss Rina?
Present simple.
Will you move?
We have a revision about tenses.
Tenses.
Because we have our ninth grade book start with a revision to the tenses.
For tenses,
So here we have.
Next. Let's give a quick idea about tenses. Miss Hola.
Okay, to start with the present simple, and it's supposed to be the easiest one. They have to see the base form, the affirmative form of the sentence. We start with the subject and verb. With the verb, we add S or without S. With he, she, it, we can add S.
Next,
They, we,
Miss
you, I, we don't add S.
Miss Rina.
In the negative form, we usually use don't or doesn't. When we add S, we use doesn't. Without S, we use don't. So subject form, don't or doesn't, and the verb in the base form. We have to pay attention to verbs that end with S, double S, SH, CH, X, Z, O. When we have verbs that end with these sounds, we add ES, like she finish, finishes. Go, goes, ES. Watch, watches, fix, fixes.
Thank you.
The use.
The question form in the simple present, we use, next, Miss Rina, please.
We start with the question word if there is a question word, what, where, when, etc. After that, we use do or does because we don't have an auxiliary. So we add an auxiliary, do or does. Then we use the subject. After that, we use the verb in the base form or infinitive.
Yes.
And the complement of the sentence.
That's why we do not use has after do and does, because the infinitive form of has is have.
Have, yes.
Like, do you speak English? Do you have a car? Does he speak English? Does he have a car? Not has.
Yeah. Next, Miss Rina.
I said something about the negative form. We use don't and doesn't.
Okay. Again, Rina. Next, the use, Miss Maha.
Yes, the use of the present simple is first with habits, habitual actions. Here we use adverbs of frequency such as always, usually, sometimes, often, never, seldom, generally, rarely, once, twice, or 3 times, frequently, every day, every week, every month, every year. Example, it often rains in winter. I go to school every day. She sometimes plays tennis.
We have a question. What paragraphs are required? Actually, the paragraphs in the writing part
Yes.
at the end
In
of
the
every
student
lesson,
and in the
students
activity
and the
book.
activity. And you will have 2 compositions, and you need to write only one out of 2.
And be sure about the one you are.
If the student writes 2 paragraphs,
The first
the
one.
first one is going to be considered. So
Yes.
only write 1. You don't need to write 2.
2.
Next, Miss Rina. Facts. The
the rest-
second use is about
Yes.
facts.
It's still about the use of the present simple. The first use was habits. The second one is facts. The earth goes round the sun. We eat to live. And the third use is the state verbs, involuntary verbs. Example, I see a bird. She hears my voice.
So we mean by state verbs or involuntary verbs, verbs that happen without any effort.
Yes.
See,
Think, love.
think, hear.
Hear.
Please. Next, Miss Rina, Miss Nesreen, you're going to talk about the present continuous tense.
The present continuous tense affirmative form is to use the verb to be in the present. So after the subject, we put am or is or are, and we add ing to the verb. This is the general idea. For example, I am playing football, she is reading a book, etc. In the question, we start with the auxiliary. For example, am I speaking quickly? Is he playing football? Are you studying? We have to pay attention to the subject and the suitable verb to be. In the negative form, we add not to the auxiliary verb, which is the verb to be. Like, for example, I'm not working, so we add not to am. She isn't cooking at the moment. They aren't studying. And this is
A notice, nota bene.
yes. I'm not. When
This is the only way to contract.
yes,
We cannot say I amn't.
I amn't. It's wrong. We don't use it. He is not. We say he isn't.
Or he's not.
Or he's not. We are not. We aren't. Or we're not.
Yes.
So
Next, Miss Rina, the use of the present continuous.
the use is to express that the first use is to express that the action is happening now, like what we are doing now. Now we are revising the 9th grade grammar. We use now, right now, at the moment, at present, today, tonight, this week, this month, this year, all these time references. For example, I am watching a film now. The second usage with incomplete action. She is writing a book. She is writing a book because she is a writer or something, so all
She
this
hasn't
time
finished.
she hasn't finished. The third one, instead of the future tense, when we talk about arrangement, which is a plan. For example, we are visiting my aunt next week. So here we use the present continuous, but we mean a future plan. With temporary actions, I am living in London now, but I am Syrian. I am a student here. So it is a temporary action to live in London. Now
Okay. Next, Miss Rina, simple past tense, Miss Saula.
Now, to talk about the simple past.
Yes.
Sorry. We have to talk about the affirmative, question, and negative forms. To start with the affirmative, in the simple past, we use the subject, the verb in the second form or the simple past, and complement of the sentence. I went to school yesterday. He played volleyball last Monday. So we have yesterday, last Monday to indicate that it's in the simple past. In the question form, because we don't have an auxiliary, we add do, does, did, and in this way, in this sentence, it's did. We start with did. After that, we use the subject and the verb in the infinitive form or the base form and the rest of the sentence. Did you play football last Monday? Did she see the film before? In the negative form, again, we don't have an auxiliary verb, so we add did not. So we start with the subject, did not, and the infinitive form of the verb, and the rest of the sentence. I didn't or did not play tennis yesterday. He didn't go to the cinema with me.
Yes, the use. Next, Miss
With
Rina.
the use,
Miss Matt
Okay,
is going
why not?
to talk about the use.
It's used to express a single action happened and ended in the past. Example, we saw that film a week ago. And we use it with the adverbs like yesterday, last week, last Saturday morning, last Tuesday evening, ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 days ago, and last year. The second thing is to express a habit that was frequent in the past. Example, I swam in the river every day last summer. 3, with unreal past. Example, she speaks as if she was an adult. I wish I knew the answer. 4, with second conditional sentences.
Next, Miss Rina.
If I was or were rich, I would buy a big house.
The following sentence. Next, Miss Rina. Past continuous, and we will stop with this. Past continuous.
Yes,
Your turn.
my turn. The past continuous, the form is after the subject, we use verb to be in the past. Was or were, plus verb ing, plus the complement. I was having dinner when you phoned. A very important idea is that we use the past continuous when we are talking about two actions in the past. One of them interrupt the second one. Like I was having dinner, or when I have a specific time in the past. The second example, the boys were playing football when the bell rang. The question form is to start with was and were, plus subject plus verb ing. Were you studying? Was he watching a film? And the negative form is to add not to the auxiliary verb. I wasn't playing, they weren't studying.
Next, Miss Rina, the use. Miss Ola.
Okay. Now about how to use past continuous. We use past continuous to talk about actions that were in progress.
Yes.
Like, for example, we were studying all day yesterday. Second one, when we talk about two actions in the past and one of them interrupted the other. In this way, we use the past continuous and most probably past simple. Like, we don't have an example? When I saw him, he was running, for example.
Yeah.
To show that action was incomplete in the past.
Actually, when anything is incomplete, we use it in the continuous. If it is in the present, present continuous. In the past, past continuous. And in the future, future continuous. They don't have future continuous for grade 9.
Yes.
They have the present and the past. Miss Nesreen mentioned about she's writing a book in the present. And I can mention I was reading a book on the plane. The meaning is I didn't finish it.
Yes.
I think we have the present perfect yet.
We mentioned it.
We mentioned
mentioned
it.
it, yes,
So we're
First
going to stop here.
Yes.
At the end of the session, we hope that students got benefit from it. I would like to thank my colleagues in the studio, Ms. Ola Al-Mouai, English Language
Thank you.
Supervisor, Tartus Directorate. Thank you. Ms. Mahal Jerkas, English Language Teacher, Damascus Directorate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Ms. Nasreen Saqbani, English Language Teacher.
Thanks for you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Ms. Ghina Al-Hayek, Director of the session, and Mr. Mahmoud Hamid, the Director of the platform. and the head of the National Center for Curricular Development, Dr. Nadi Al-Ghazzouli, the Minister Deputy, Dr. Darim Tabba, and thanks to our Minister, the brave Minister, Mr. Imad Al-Azab. This is me, Abdul Majid Ogherli, Senior Supervisor and Coordinator of English Curriculum. Thank you so much